Good evening. I'm Jay Marshall, and I'm a doctoral history student at Liberty University, and today I'll be talking about why the concept of Western civilization is relevant for today. There are certainly plenty of reasons to question if it is indeed relevant. The Italian humanists would have been horrified by this notion of translatio imperi, this idea of a direct continuation of the legacy of Roman civilization through Europe. It would have linked them to the barbarism they perceived in the Dark Ages, the notion that the Holy Roman Emperor would be able to carry on their legacy would have been a no-go. Moreover, as Lawrence Birkin observed, there were actually three successors to Rome. There was the Western civilization, the Byzantine, and the Islamic. How could the West be more legitimate than the Eastern part of the Roman Empire? If anyone had a claim to the legacy, it would be them. And how could the West be more legitimate when so many of the ideas that inflamed Europe and led to their great success had to be reintroduced through the Byzantine and Islamic texts? Certainly problematic. Additionally, we have to deal with current day critics of the West who have found it to be guilty of racism, a legacy of slavery, imperialism, colonialism, sexism, and environmental destruction. What even is the West? As Robert Royal noted, it is not a specific geographical location. Parts of Africa are actually west of Ireland. England recently had a messy divorce, any way you want to look at it, from continental Europe, and a long history of a special relationship with America that made it a bad European for the common market. So in terms of trying to establish what the territorial confines of this West would be geographically, it's problematic. But part of the value is in that uncertainty. Rather than be uncomfortable with these discordant notes, we should embrace them. The only photo I could find that sort of resembled a hug was me with the mascot at the school I work with. This is Bezosaurus rex, short for Rex. He's our mascot. We're the Yellow Jackets, similar to Georgia Tech. We need to be more like the Stoics. The obstacle in the path becomes the path. And rather than hiding from or trying to argue away the contradictions and controversy, we need to embrace those as they provide us with a wonderful subject to debate, explore, and yes, even struggle with to promote our mutual growth. Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, and Louis Althusser and the Stoics and Epicurus provide some great examples there. And really, when we're looking at the West, we need to keep in mind that some of the best of history is asking students the challenging questions. Should the US have dropped the bomb? Should the US have intervened in the Great War? Should Ford have sold the Pinto, a car that would go on to be the largest recalled vehicle because of the loss of life and danger it provided? Similarly, we have a wonderful opportunity to discuss how, if, and why the West is important. It allows us to explore the great story of how amazing progress could be realized after the fall of Rome, and then industrialization, the rediscovery and redefining of democracy, as well as the rise of capitalism and relative prosperity. The West is not a place, but just like the American West in the Turner Frontier Thesis, it becomes so much more than that. It becomes an idea. It's an ideal, like Thomas More's Utopia. It's a set of values, a culture. Liberty from external restraint, but powered by self-mastery. The effort to secure individual liberty in the religious, political, cultural, and economic spheres lies at the heart of the whole modern project. This is a story we should want to share. We should embrace that conflict between the ideal of Western civilization and the competing philosophies of Marxism, anti-colonialism, and New Left revisionism. What an inspired class that would be. What a stimulating debate and dialogue. What a worthy cause to fight. It doesn't matter that the West may not be the translatio imperi. To be that would be to take away from all that the West has achieved and become. By trying to make it more, we make it less. And an especially powerful part of reading our text, Amending Freedom, How the English-Speaking Peoples Made the Modern World, was the author's memories of growing up as a boy in Peru and the farm being attacked, the family farm, by a specter of mob rule, people coming to take away the land, and his recognition of the feeble nature of their property rights and the rule of law in that country, and his identification of the stark differences between British colonies and those of the nations on the Iberian Peninsula. I mean, Spain and Portugal, they split the world between them and had the benefit of so many more bountiful natural resources in their adopted lands. But it was the British colonies that would rise in prosperity. And for me, being half Portuguese, that really struck home. And I'm an Anglophile myself, but really the textbook we're using creates as many problems as it does solutions, in that it really shifts the focus to more of a English-speaking culture rather than a Western civilization. And in reading it, and I'm an Anglophile myself, admittedly, but I couldn't help finding myself hearing the words of Cecil John Rhodes himself, not as he was establishing the Rhodes Scholarship, but rather as he was dreaming of expanding the British Empire. Nonetheless, the words of Lawrence E. Harrison and Samuel P. Huntington seem to resonate. A growing number of scholars, journalists, politicians, and development practitioners are focusing on the role of cultural values and attitudes as facilitators of or obstacles to progress. It is from their book, Culture Matters, How Values Shape Human Progress, and it does matter. Of course, in fairness, that means it will also be necessary to consider the British disease of the latter part of the 20th century, when they became a victim of their own success and prosperity. But that will be just more fodder for the senior seminars. Thank you and good night. But before I log off, hopefully my fur babies have not made any cameos or any barking. We were able to avoid the train. I also want to show you the notes. And just to say, I'm looking forward to this class. I'm looking forward to seeing your video presentations. And thank you for taking this journey with me.